For the audience, I've been following Mike for a few years, and I love how he explains the history of professional development. I also love his keynote style. It's very similar to mine because we facilitate our keynotes in the teaching style. I had the pleasure of sitting in Mike's keynote at this year's PLC at Work Summit. And Mike, you are awesome. Much respect to you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Coming from a teacher like you, I think that's the highest praise. Your intro was very kind, and yet I don't think it captured what I'm most proud of. And I think what makes me effective when I teach and learn with teachers now, and that's this: I'm a practitioner. I'm not a researcher. I am very appreciative of people who spend their career researching what works in schools in a clinical, objective way. My expertise is how do you implement that? I spent 22 years on site, mostly as a teacher, as a site administrator. The question of how do you take what's proven to work and implement it in a real life school with limited resources, with diverse student needs, and do it within your contractual days. You're not asking more of educators. That's where I've spent my life. So your question about professional development, I've deeply studied the history of educational PD in America as much as I take off my consultant hat now and I put on my educator hat. For 22 years, I was the receiver of professional development. And at some point, I looked back in my career and I became the this too shall pass kind of guy. But the reason why is because my experience was we never stuck with anything. In my current keynote for the PLC at Work Institutes, and the one I used at the summit, I think you're referencing, is I just completed my 37th year in public education. And
Wow.
I go through kind of the major movements that I went through. I was trying to be a teacher during Madeline Hunter times. You couldn't get a job unless you quoted Hunter at that time, right? My ed prep program prepped me well, and I started my classroom lacking experience, but at least some pedagogy structures to build upon. Start with an anticipatory set, and then I do, we do, you do. Within 2 years, like that was off the plate in the district that I was in. We had a new soup, and all of a sudden, higher level thinking skills was the thing. And for 2 straight years, all of our PD and our teacher observations were about using Bloom's taxonomy to help kids get to higher levels of thinking. I would just start to get pretty good at that. And it was like, no, not that. Now it's cooperative learning. You're not the stage on the stage teacher. You're the guide on the side. Kids need to lead their own learning. I went to a Kagan Cooperative Learning Conference, and that was 2 years. And then what? Technology. Technology is the answer. You need to learn how to use technology inside your classroom for like 3 years. That was the push of the district that I was in. Then that was off the plate. Why? No Child Left Behind passed. So then it was, what does that high stakes test look like? We should be giving kids questions in the format they're going to see on that state test and focus on the strands that come up most in the blueprints of those state tests. And that was a few years. And then that was off the table. Why? Now we can't trust teachers anymore to teach. Get a program and have teachers follow it with fidelity. And that's when I went to admin. So all of a sudden it was like, walk through each teacher's classroom. They should be scripting on the same pace. And if not, you're not doing your job, instructional leader. And then it turned into walkthroughs. I'm going to walk through and coach teachers and eval teachers. It seemed like every time when I was a teacher, I had a new principal or a new soup or a different party took over the governorship in my home state of California, or a new president came in, because I came in and started teaching when Reagan was president. So I've gone through Republican, Democrat, like all bets are off. I think lots of teachers enter PD with hope. Like, I hope I can glean a few things I might be able to use in my classroom, but they don't fully commit to whatever the newest research is or the focus is, because their commitment won't be rewarded with ongoing support to get great at it. So we never get great at anything.
Mike, you're very well known in education, but tell us your backstory. How did you get into education, and what steps did you take to get where you are now as an education consultant?
Why I didn't like going from teacher to principal is my passion's teaching. And you teach as an administrator. I think a good administrator teaches, but that's not your day job. You're putting out fires the whole day so that teachers can do their best work. I think great administrators create the conditions for teachers to do great work. And you try to take hits. You try to do as much as you can to keep things off their plate so they can focus on their teaching. But your day job isn't teaching. So when I went to consulting full time, that was me going back to my roots. I get to teach again. I'm going to teach adults. Teachers deserve PD in which you're doing best teaching practice. You should be a teacher's teacher. And I know you feel that way.
On this show, I don't believe I've ever told anyone I'm a fan of theirs, except you. Your style of teaching, your style of keynoting, you start with the hook, and it's very dynamic for the audience. He's very reserved right now. He's just chilling. I'm breaking code right now. He's just chilling. But this man right here, he hooks you in the beginning very quickly, quick story, but then immediately he jumps into the outcomes, and then he does some direct instruction, 7 to 10 minutes, 9 minutes tops. Then he gives you something to do, not to turn and talk like most people do, but actually something where you're writing down, reflecting, you got your metacognition going. Then you say something to someone, but then he continues again. He makes sure everyone got the information before he gets into the next outcome. Honestly, I'm not sure why. I'm not sure how we don't do it this way, but this is the way to do it. When I saw you, it really affirmed things I'm doing. I learned a lot from you. Listening to you on other podcasts, I've learned a lot. You are my favorite keynote and my favorite presenter. And I've never said that before. Just letting you know that, sir.
I am honored and humbled. And so it does show you I was trained to be a teacher during Madeline Hunter times because our direct instruction, they are. I'm going to be really clear on the outcomes. I'll have an anticipatory set. When you teach teachers or learn with teachers, you better be good. And why? Because they can tell if you're a used car salesman. And they can tell good teaching. You can't fake it up there.
No.
I think that's the highest compliment that you could possibly give me, is to tell me that you think I'm an effective teacher. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with Jorge Valenzuela.